And we are recording on Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025 at 9:11 a.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Dr. Astronaut E.M. Burlingame. You guys can go into the description. You can find Substack, Twitter, YouTube, your two books, I believe now. The first I've read is Eternal War. And forgive me for the life of me, I don't remember the second one that I was supposed to have read, but as I just told you, I had to Dale Comstock has a second book out, and I was supposed to have him on for that, and I've had to reschedule. And it's
Well,
normally
I've
I don't
got
I shift stuff around, but I think the Charlie Kirk assassination has been such like a fundamental sea change that some of these shows that I plan months out, where I'm like, yeah, I just know I got to read the book a week before, they're kind of going on the back burner right now. So, um,
all good. Good.
yeah.
I've actually published four in the last
Oh,
five
fuck
weeks.
me. All right. Oh, fuck me.
Getting caught up.
Gee, all right. Well,
Yeah.
I'll shut my mouth.
No. This is my way of saying no worries for not being caught up.
Yeah.
I've got another one I'm about halfway through right now, which is, um, again about how do we save our young men, right?
There's and my buddy's very close, not buddy, one of my best friends, very intelligent dude. Sent me something last night, and I did think it was kind of fascinating because I remember the first thing that happened right when Trump came into office and hit USAID. Me and my friends, some of the like military guys like Una Clay, we had kind of rightfully been dooming the last several years,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we'd always poo-poo QAnon, one because it seems like a pacification program, but two, there's a sort of like you almost didn't want to believe because it would just hurt, and not the idea of QAnon, but the idea of good people. Um, and I remember when they cut USAID, we were all talking about like this seems a lot more organized than his first time coming in. It was, and I'll use this analogy. Helldivers 2, super fun game, fighting robots and shit. You can get caught in fighting, we call it lost in the sauce, where you forget what you're doing, you ignore the game clock and it's counting down. You're just shooting bots coming over it's just World War One with robots. And every once in a while you gotta kind of shock yourself out of it and be like, you have to find the fabricator. And the fabricator is the little building the size of this room that spits out the robots. You gotta go find them. It's harder. And then you gotta fucking drop a JDAM on it, and then that stops the flow. Right? So symptom source. First administration kind of seemed like symptom. They were just blasting the robots and whatever. This one, the USAID, as soon as they come in, my first thought was like, oh, that's someone that's been learning from their last one, watching for the last 4 years. But again, I kind of didn't get my hopes up because I just don't want to be let down. But now, and then shows we've done specifically with you about, what were the California riots? What are you really drawing out? Kind of action, reaction. And yeah, and then so my buddy sent me this and he goes, and now this is some tweet, um, shutting down their brown shirts, right, with the official designation of Antifa as a terrorist group. I still I have to and I say this only because I take this advice directly from when I spoke to Mike Durant. I said, "How did you maintain hope?" And he goes, "Easy, don't maintain hope. Assume it's going to fail, and that way you won't be let down." And I was like, Whoa. I'm protecting my heart." But it does kind of seem a lot more methodical of like snip. Now, granted, USAID till now has been 8 months, 8.5, but still, comms, ground forces, just snip, seal the border, just kind of maneuvering slowly. Because I happen to have you here today in your history, I kind of wanted to see if you would comment on that, or not. We can just fucking take it in a
Well,
different direction. I don't care.
let's do some other little snips.
Yeah.
Why did we change the name to the Department of War?
Well, I'm happy they did because I think the Department of War was founded on my birthday, August
Oh,
7th.
awesome.
Yeah. And I've
So,
always been upset that it went back to defense.
so another Leo. I got my mother, my ex-wife, my daughter, and a cat. They're all Leos. Um, and now my favorite podcaster as well.
Oh, you.
Um, yeah, so Department of War, what is that? We're breaking away from the MIC, the military industrial complex. We're breaking away from Langley. This was a declaration of war. And who are we at war with? Well, the same people who killed the Kennedys. No, you will not accomplish your agenda. Russia had to do this in the late 90s. China is still coming out of it now, right? Um, why did we start using military assets to blow up fast boats coming out of Venezuela?
And I was gonna use that when I was doing the snips, but I wasn't sure if it was related.
Yeah, it's okay. Well, we're going to use military assets to hit intelligence assets. Why did we declare against the cartels? Because that's the intelligence assets funding mechanisms. We got to go
Hmm.
back to the 1980s, and there were um, congressional hearings with Oliver North, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, talking about Iran-Contra, moving drugs for guns, right, out of South and Central America. So, and then we got the Fast and Furious program and all that. So the oligarchs, the responsibles faction of the oligarchs have declared war on the intelligence agencies. And so how do the intelligence agencies respond? Well, they've been trying to start war, world war in Russia. They tried to start world war in Iran. They're trying to start world war in South Asia. And I have very, very high confidence they just killed Charlie Kirk to try and
Yeah,
radicalize the young men here.
try to set it off here.
Well, and specifically Charlie Kirk, one, because he's the moderate, but the other is because he's Christian and they want this Christian revival to happen because that helps feed the disgust mechanisms. What they
Hmm.
want is Christian nationalism. I just posted Mussolini's 1932 speech on fascism. People need to remember the National Socialists, Nazis, were not fascists, they were National Socialists. The Italians, under Mussolini in the early 1930s, are the ones who rolled out fascism. And in fascism, you're a Christian.
Mm.
But instead of the church being, the church, the church is the state.
And for simpletons like me, socialism is more, it's not outright communism, but it's kind of one big blob, whereas fascism is private corporations that are
It's
less
still
than,
socialism. Yeah.
but backdoor, but not quite
Yeah.
openly
It's
one
not
one blob.
Marxist. Yeah, it's not
Okay,
Marxist socialism. It's corporate
got it. All right.
socialism, oligarch. Really, what it is um, oligarchy at its purest form.
Hmm.
And they need the young men radical. So what did they do? What did they do in the 19 teens and 20s? Is the bankers, the Praetorians, et cetera, they fed Marxism in Europe after the war, after World War One, and went exact same stuff: gender bending, same-sex marriages, coupling, partnering, all of us, everywhere is blown up everywhere in the news and the media and the press and the old movie, everything. And going after nation states and borders and communities and cultures and all that. Exactly the same has been happening the last 25, 30 years here. But then what was the purpose? The purpose then was to get people into a place of disgust, get people back to the church. And in Germany's case, it wasn't to the church, it was to the state. In Italy, it was to the church, which was the state. And that model worked. And then and so the disgust mechanisms are high, and then you radicalize and then martialize the young men around that, and then you lead them off into the great slaughter.
Hmm.
So that's what this Christian nationalism stuff is here. It's fascism. It's 1932 speech by Benito Mussolini. I just put the link up. Everybody should read it. Now, is that, you know, the responsibles faction and Trump faction? I don't think so. I don't believe you know, they're certainly not on the Marxist side. And I don't also believe that they're on the fascist side. And I think that's why they tried to kill him. I think that's why they killed Charlie Kirk. The fascist side did. The fascist faction of the Resentfuls killed Charlie Kirk and then tried to pin it on the Marxists, furries and everything else. Because that's what you do. That's what they did in the early 1930s. That's how they got the Nazis in power. It's how they got Mussolini in power in Italy. Now, those are two very separate things, by the way, right? Two very separate efforts. People keep looking at fascism as if it's Nazi, National Socialism, and that's not the case. And we need to parse those two out because fascism worked fairly well. as
The
National
trains are on
Socialist.
time.
What's that?
So the trains are on time, right?
Trains were on time, everything worked, the economy functioned, everything worked. So in the late 1930s, Germans, Hitler and the Germans went to Benito Mussolini and said, teach us this fascist model because the National Socialist model, economically, financially, industrially, is not working. So people conflate National Socialist Nazis with fascist, and that's not, we need to be careful because Italy also had, not Italy, Franco in Spain was also a fascist model, which they had to do to beat the Marxists because, got to remember, there was a civil war there. And the Marxists were doing horrible shit, digging up nuns
No,
and
yeah,
desecrating nuns and killing it just horrible, horrible
Spanish.
things.
I think what? Yeah, the Spanish who's I think Richard
Hemingway,
Rhodes. Yeah, yeah, but
mm,
Richard Rhodes wrote a book on. I can't remember it for the life of me. But yeah, no, just yeah, no, most fucked up shit.
horrible, atrocious things. And so in Spain, Franco had to use the fascist model in order to have the manufacturing production capabilities to be able to fight, both the Republicans and the communists because they were getting supplied by Germany and the outside, you know, um, by all kinds of forces were, using Spain as a test bed for what would be used in World War II, much like Ukraine has been being used for as a test bed for World War III, which is mostly getting taken off the table.
Just as I was just thinking, so are the trains on time? And then I was gonna make a poor joke about like the Nazis trains. But I just started thinking, I wonder if that's just completely out of left field. I wonder if you could find like an indicator of a nation's, I don't know, trajectory or current status just based on like railways. I was just thinking like, well, I wonder what China's railways are like. And that doesn't really work because you have high speed rails in Europe and Europe's going to shit. So maybe that's a bad point. Just thinking as like a random like biomarker, like railways in countries.
Well, you can actually, there's a reason Warren Buffett bought so heavily into the railways, right?
Yeah.
I'm not calling him a fascist or a Nazi. That's not, or that's not
No,
what I'm
it's a
saying. What
smart,
I'm
no, it's a
saying
smart
though is
move.
because it is an indicator of, so he has data, market data on many, many things.
Yeah.
It's not so much just the rails themselves, it's all the logistics related to the rail and how well is all of that doing, right?
Is rail still the most, is it rail or is it ship that's the most energy efficient when you come out to tons over time, over
Ships,
distance? Yeah.
ships.
Yeah.
Yeah, water transport, which is one of the things U.S. benefits, particularly east of the Rockies, is massive ship capability. Even here, actually, in Pacific Northwest, people don't realize we have an inland seaport here in the Pacific Northwest.
There's, and again, not to completely derail the conversation. I've been having fun kind of just watching over the years and just reading about future ones of just how big the shipping container ships are getting.
Yeah,
And
oh yeah. They're
they
like
are,
islands.
dude, they
Yeah.
are. And then every year you're like, they're like, they come out and they're like, we've hit like the maximum. But they've got so much money invested in it that they throw everything at trying to different widths and different like how are they locked together. I think the biggest one right now is like 33,500 18-wheeler containers. Just fucking um
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up the tweet my buddy sent me. I'm gonna send it to you. Um let's see. About kind of going through, yeah. So I don't know anything about clandestine. For all I know, I'm talking about this guy's retarded. But so Trump is neutralizing their. So it starts with yeah USAID foreign aid. Now he's shutting down their brown shirts Antifa. He's neutralizing their ability to utilize their playbook with USAID funding shut down and Antifa now a terrorist organization. Soros and the Dems are losing their color change capabilities, revolution color change capabilities. There's the playbook, blah, blah, blah. So cutting off shutting down their sleeping cells, MS-13, Trendy, Aragua, paramilitary groups, Antifa. So he's saying he's doing all this before some move that Trump is going to make. I believe Trump wanting to deploy National Guard to Dem cities nationwide has a lot to do with Antifa, potential sleeper cells, who will be activated if Trump arrests high-profile individuals. The deep state have a standing army of left-wing paramilitary extremists ready to riot, and we know that. And Trump knows he must neutralize this before he makes arrests. So, per this, again, it has as much integrity as either, I don't know, a researched history book or a fortune cookie. I have no idea. But
Or a
yeah,
research fortune cookie.
or a research fortune cookie. It's gonna be my fucking side business. Fucking and it's actually valuable fortune cookies. Um, but so this is hypothesizing that it's yes, he's doing it. He's taking out the robot fabricators, but it's more than just he's taking out the robot fabricators. There's something following.
Yes.
Again, just because I have absolutely no expertise in any of this shit. I have a biology degree. Is there any credence to that? Is this
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, go for it.
Absolutely. Um, what people need to understand, everybody, this is Mimi's butt. Um, it's just our old
You're
cat
good.
from Japan.
You're
Come
good.
here, girly. Um, okay, so what people need to understand is that we are repeating almost exactly 1 century later what happened in Europe. Okay, particularly what happened in Italy, what they tried to do in Spain, and what happened in Germany. And people need to realize that Franco, for however you want to paint him, Franco did an extraordinary job of not dragging Spain, preventing Spain from being dragged into the slaughter of World War II. Love him or hate him, but he did an extraordinary job and needs to be studied and respected. But that's an aside. Um, okay. In order of operations, you have to cut off continued funding, state funding, obvious funding in the ways you can. You then have to go after illicit funding because, those two you can do and not get, um, the public tearing you out of your seat of office. Then you have to, and while you're doing that, you have to take off the foot soldiers that are being used. So give me a second. So there's two sides to this, right? There's the responsible side trying to undo this illicit power structure, this invisible Praetorian power structure. And on the other side is this invisible Praetorian power structure that's metastasized in many different things, and it's counter-reacting, right? So on the Praetorian side, what does it do? It has an order of which assets it burns in the fight, right? So as the responsibles are moving against these resentful factions, the first one, resentful factions, that they burn, the Praetorians burn on their side are the Marxists because they're easy, right? Because they're a smaller percentage of the population, the really radicalized ones, the crazy ones, the violent ones, and they're insane. And you don't want them in a fight anyways, because you don't know if they're going to turn on
Turn on
you,
you. Yeah.
because that's happened historically,
Yeah.
right? So, in order to press, so on the asset burning side, and then the asset, the war fighting capacity going after side, diminishing side, the first ones that get burned are obvious public funding mechanisms. Got it. Well, that funds most of these crazies anyways, in various forms and fashions. So you go after that first. And so as you're getting rid of those funds on the responsible side, the resentfuls are just going to burn those, the Marxists, the communists, literally just batshit crazy people, right? Okay, what just happened in Utah? Well, they pinned it all on
The
these
furry.
crazies,
Yeah.
these crazy young men, et cetera. And it's not to say that they weren't involved. I have very low confidence that they actually did the shooting. I have very low confidence that that young man actually killed Charlie Kirk. It's possible.
Sure.
It's not highly probable, but it's possible. And I'm no ballistics expert, so I'm not going to articulate that. But in this unconventional warfare, I do understand that pretty well. So give me a second.
Hmm.
Um, the next ones you go, so you've got tiering of Marxists, right? You got the batshit crazy ones, and then all the way down to the pretty dedicated, serious guerrillas. Well, the very serious guerrillas are generally funded by illicit activities, opium, cocaine, fentanyl. They're the trafficking funded operations. So you take out the crazies by taking out the welfare system, USAID. You start going after the dedicated Marxist by going after the illicit funding networks. And if people want an example, look at the FARC in Colombia, right? So, okay, so responsibles go after the crazies, cut that funding off. They burn the crazies in, violent actions and, you know, uh, the assassination of the CEO of, that pharmaceutical company, the hit the young man in Butler, the young man in Utah, right? And it's not just the fighting and killing, it's also the discrediting of that community, the turning of people's disgust against that community. It's all kinds of ways. Okay, then you go after the illicit funding, right? And that's the cartels, that's the, transnational gangs. I've written about that when I was doing targeting decade plus ago. Um, I think I wrote about it 2012, and it's only gotten vastly bigger. So you go after those next. These are your guerrillas. These are real people, real players. You go after their foot soldiers here in the country, which are, um, quote unquote cartel fighters, et cetera, muscle men. Uh, and they want to burn those guys too because those guys are more criminally minded. They're not really ideologically minded. They're not going to bring about your revolution. Also, they are ideologically aligned with Marxism more than fascism. And so you want them out of the way anyways, right? You want to, okay. The next thing you got to do is now you're getting down to your real enemies, right? Those are throwaways. Now you're getting down to your real enemies. Well, who are your real enemies? Your real enemies are the fascists. That's what they want, right? That's what they've been setting up for 40 years is this fascist system, this fascist government, and they need it anyways. Terribly sorry, I got allergies or
Weird.
something in my eye. Um, they need to transition to this fascist system anyways. Think cryptocurrencies, stable coins, all this other stuff, because the previous system is bankrupt. It's got vast debts that can never be repaid. And you need to, do a hard reset system transition, which you've been setting up, right? Cloud pivot strategy, et cetera. And you need a hard transition to this fascist system just to save people's retirements and all this other stuff. Well, unfortunately, tied in with that is a fascist system, right? This total control system and radicalization of the young men and war, right? Because the only way fascist system works is war. It needs massive, constant war because what a fascist system, for all intents and purposes, is a direct partnering between industry and government, and the only reasons industry and government directly partner is for the conduct of war. So you got to radicalize young men. So you got to start going after that. And how do you do that, right? Well, on the responsible side, you start going after wealthy, elite, industrialist bank, the Praetorian banking system behind, and you start going after their wealth generation and their stockpile because they've been war chesting wealth offshore in the spider's web for since I
Forever.
started looking at it in 1999, 2000. It went from roughly 17, 19 trillion dollars. It's over 100 now. They have a massive war chest. The reality is, though, is that most of it is derivative wealth. So what you do is you start going after some of the markets. You start going after some of the derivative wealth
What
generating
what's derivative wealth?
products,
What does derivative wealth mean?
bonds. Bonds are a derivative wealth. It doesn't have a direct underlying revenue stream, right?
Got
It's not profits from a profit generating company. And even profit generating companies you got to look at because sometimes they're profit generating, but heavily from government funding. Or they're a service company to some industry that isn't really necessary, which is a lot of, yeah, go ahead.
Would it help if you just closed your eyes? I don't know if
No, I
that,
can't actually.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah, yeah.
welcome to.
No, it's whatever it is.
No, you're
It's
good.
it's annoying is more than anything else. So,
I don't care. I just for your
yeah,
sake.
yeah, yeah, I
I was gonna say
appreciate it.
I can turn away. We can both just do it with our eyes closed. I don't care.
No, it's just, anyways.
100
So,
trillion derivative wealth, not
yeah,
direct
so you
profit
got to start
lines.
going after the derivative wealth. And what do you do? Well, you go after certain markets, derivative markets, you go after certain types of banking transactions, you go after all kinds, you go after um, certain types of banks that earn funds off of, transporting, of overnight swaps and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? All the sophisticated stuff, but it's all derivative stuff. It's not actual baseline revenue generating, producing, augmenting, savings, etc. So you start going after that. So how do the resentfuls? Well, the resentfuls go after radicalizing your young men. And specifically in this case with the fascists, what do? They try to Christian nationalize your young men, right? Because fascism, again, as Benito Mussolini, stop conflating it with Nazism, National Socialism. But Benito Mussolini declared that, fascists were Christians, but the church was the state. And it actually says it, if I remember correctly. I haven't read the speech in a while, but it's right there in the speech. Point being is this: it's move, counter move, right? The next move has to be, for and so what do? So they kill Charlie Kirk. Why? Because that's going to drive a whole lot of young people. Look at the rallies, look at it. It's going to drive vast numbers of people to Christianity, but it's their Christianity, right? It's their form of Christianity, the kind of Christianity that they want to shape and guide. This Protestant, well, actually, it tends to be heavily Catholic, um, and some of the older Protestant denominations. But they want to drive all the young men over here to Christianity so that they can radicalize them around all the old concepts and ideas of Christianity, and then set them loose against an enemy. Well, in this case, it's Islam, because that's what all that stuff that's happening with all the immigration and forced immigration and all the rape gangs and everything else was specifically setting up so that when they move to radicalize the young men, drive them into Christianity in large numbers and radicalize them over there, then they give them an enemy that is an ancient enemy that they'll go fight to their own destruction, by the way, right? And that's Islam. Give me a second.
You're good.
Um, the piece that has to happen on the responsible side is they have to, and I'm not saying that a revival of Christianity, some form of Christianity, which is not my belief system, isn't good thing, right? But it's this radicalization of that they're very good at. They've been doing it for a very long time, centuries. That's not good, right? Um, and it isn't also that a form of national patriotism isn't also a necessary thing. That's also a good thing, but it's the radicalization of it to channelize that together into a force that'll go out and die and kill in vast numbers. That's the dangerous part. So how does the responsibles have to react? Well, they have to very carefully, strategically start taking out the funding individuals and families and people behind the radicalization side of things, the ones who are twisting and contorting from behind the scenes. And that's probably the Epstein list,
Mm.
right? And I mean, it is the people on the Epstein list, but what I mean is that's probably when we'll start seeing the Epstein list come out. Now, how is the other side going to react? The other side has to react because it's what you're doing. We've seen it, right, in our own lives, right? It's like, yeah, but they're doing it too, right? So when people start coming out on the Epstein list, what's going to happen? We already saw it where they tried to say that Trump was on the Epstein list, right? And who knows what the list really is, because it's been in their hand, in the government's hands for a
Sure.
decade plus. And so who really knows what that list is? But point being is you have to start taking them out. You got to start taking them down. I suspect this is what the dinner was, the royal dinner in UK. Because if you in at Windsor, actually,
Yeah.
if you look at the royal dinner, look who was there. It was a whole lot of tech CEOs and tech founders. A lot of these people. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but it's important. There's a reason I wrote about the Praetorian problem, because it's very real. The Praetorian problem, very clearly, is a security assets, right? Security apparatus and assets that are the security for elite people and thereby are secretly in control.
As the great Clay Martin says, who owned your bug out
Who
estate?
owns,
You or your head
right?
of security?
So I suspect what just happened in Windsor was the responsibles oligarchs, not just American, but the responsibles oligarchs telling those people, we have your, we know who the threats are in your security. And we are, through Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Kent, and others. Joe's focused on a somewhat different area. We know we have all this intelligence, and we're going to better provide your security,
Mm,
even against your own. And if something moved, because there's other things that happen as well, people need to realize. You got to understand, I guarantee you 40 to 80 million dollars was given to somebody like Eric Prince or somebody else, or maybe several, and there's a kill switch around Trump. And if they try to kill Trump again, or Trump gets killed, we're going to watch some other prominent people get taken out,
yeah, yeah,
because that's how
makes
this game
sense.
is.
Well, it's
But
also
you,
deterrence. It's the only thing psychopaths understand is
correct,
deterrence. It's the only
correct.
reason mutual assured destruction. That's the only reason we got through the Cold War. That's the
That's
only
exactly
reason.
right.
It wasn't because of, oh, it's we're gonna kill so many people. It's they
Yeah.
went, I shoot this, it lands on my villa outside of Moscow.
Yes.
No. Has nothing to do with I won't sacrifice 100 million of my own.
No.
I
Yeah.
won't
Yeah. Yeah.
sacrifice that. Has
Yeah.
nothing to
Yeah.
do with
You won't make it to your bunker.
yeah, but even then they look at the bunker
Yeah.
and did a lot of them will look at the bunkers and I think there's like a JFK quote, maybe it was LBJ where they're down there and they're like, I'd rather die because it's concrete and fluorescent
Yeah.
lights and they're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
what? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so the point is so a kill switch would make sense because that's the only thing they would understand.
Correct.
Not we'll sanction
Correct.
you, not we're gonna, fuck character assassinate you. The only thing that they understand is it's a portal in front of them, and they know if they shoot through the portal, the bullet hits them. That's the only thing that
It
stops
is exactly the case. And by the
them.
way, this is ancient. This goes back
Well, none
to,
of this is oh, this is transcendent of where we are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, we're not quite to the fight yet. I think it's probably 2 to 3 years away, although everything accelerates and it's hard to time. It's like the markets, a major market movement's going to happen, but you can't exactly time it.
I need to fucking pull it up. There's a guy I had on here years ago, Fred Burton, who I believe
Mm,
is the head of Stratfor now, or was.
mm,
He had a book because I think he was at Benghazi, which
which is Rand. Hmm.
yeah, Under Fire, I think was the book. I had him on for that. Maybe it's in there. Um, haven't had him on since. But in it, and that's the one thing I remember from it, is because I read so many books for the show, I really only remembered like one sentence from each book is he had gone and met Trump in I think the 80s
Mm,
as like a young, was it DSS, Department of State Security? Just
mm,
whatever, crossing paths, I don't know,
yeah,
whatever, revolving
yeah,
door of jobs. And he goes in the 80s at just one of his casinos. And this isn't me where
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
surprised by anything intel like because it's I don't have this is a guy who was like in all of that helped I think he helped architect like future embassies, safe rooms, fireproof safe
Mm,
rooms,
yeah.
the whole nine yards. He went into Trump's security room in just one of his casinos, not even like the the primary one, and he said it dwarfed anything he had seen, classified things he had seen in embassies abroad
Oh, yeah,
in the 80s.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
that makes me think that well, not only does he understand like the necessity of an all-seeing eye, that also makes me think he understands the importance of a Praetorian Guard. I really do. More so
Uh,
than perhaps others. Maybe I'm
correct.
naive, but
No,
more
no,
so than
no.
perhaps others.
Correct. So, okay. So, Tommy,
Like if my podcast, God willing, ever gets big, I'm happy very early on I became friends with you, Clay, Dale, Baz.
yeah.
Because I've known these guys since before I could ever offer them anything. So I'm like, because if my show got big and I hired a security team, all I would ever think about is what Clay said.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this my security team or are these my handlers?
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
So, okay. No, 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 no. We're getting right to it, right? So, as I've said, I think with you, or maybe it might have been Mike Ferris, I think something was set in motion by the oligarchs and, the responsible factions within the agencies and the military and government that was we recognition, a full final recognition, we have a Praetorian problem and we have to remove it. And everything since then has been preparation for that movement, and it's now happening.
And when did it start?
It started in the 1960s.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I believe.
And in fact, I think the one who probably really started it was Eisenhower.
Yeah.
And they did not understand or appreciate how deep the Praetorian problem was already then.
Mm.
And that's what got the Kennedys killed and others, right? People got to look around the world. We got to remember from the 1960s and 1970s were pretty violent. A lot of people were getting assassinated. A lot of prominent people were getting assassinated all over Europe, here in the United States, all kinds of bombings, right? I think we had 500 bombings here in 1 year in the United
Very
States.
close. I think I remember saying this in 2020. It's a very close mirror to now. Like unpopular, granted, we just got out of GWAP, but
Yeah,
Ukraine, unpopular wars, presidents leaving, like a Nixon or, JFK gets his head blown off. Nixon steps down. You have this weird, will Trump leave January 6th, stolen
yeah, 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 yeah.
election, almost gets his head blown off, riots in this, and it's very odd because at the same time, you also have like a space race. It is kind of odd how much it reflects itself.
So you can delay, you can't stop the big movements.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's what I suspect. I suspect that we are now in that culmination phase where this fight's happening.
Hmm.
And what do you have to do? Back to the earlier part of the, conversation. You have to burn the enemy's assets and players, and you have to try and do as much of this as you can without it all going hot,
Yeah.
right? Because the one thing about the resentfuls is while they want it to go hot, they very much don't want it to be them that does it because they don't unless they have the state, right? If they have the state and they can control the state, then they don't care.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the state, which they don't right now, at least not at the federal level and many of the states, um, then they don't want to be the one to go hot because then state level assets can be used and turned, against them. So what do they want to do? What do? They provocate, and they try to scare and direct and radicalize and all this other kind of stuff so that, at the next election cycles, uh, so that they can try and get themselves back in power, where they try to discredit those in the state, those backing the state, et cetera, by doing assassinations like Charlie Kirk and others, right? And not just here in the US, but abroad, and say, you know, they try to discredit those in power. They try to paint them to be people who need to be removed because they're violent, because or if they can't do that, then they make bad choices and this violence happened and they didn't stop it, all this kind of stuff. So they can try and get back in power and have the state and then use the power of the state, to take over. Um, so that's what we're watching from behind the scenes. Anybody who knows how to watch, we're watching this fight wage out in the courts. We're watching it wage out in the financial system. We're watching it wage out in um, diplomacy, with Europe, telling Europe, you're on your own. You want to go fight the Russians, you go ahead, but you're on your own. And then no matter what the, fascists are trying to do, the resentfuls are trying to do to get World War III, we seem to be able to shunt that off, right? Like the strike on Iran, the strike on the Russian bombers, the BS that they're trying to do in Myanmar and Thailand and Southeast Asia, the stuff they try to do with Pakistan and India, right? That's another threat we need to watch out for because there's a reason they're flooding all these Indians and Pakistanis in because those are Indians and Pakistanis that can be used by the resentfuls faction. And there's a lot of them that they can kill. And that's the thing, right? Um, who has the available population of young men that can be sent to the slaughter?
Hmm.
It ain't us, but they got to send our young men, which few we have, off to the slaughter. That's how they, take over their final and total power and control. So, where are we now? Where we are now is they're burning and steadily burning the Marxists and the Marxist. Why? Because the Marxist funding isn't there anymore. Now they're going to move to steadily burn the cartel and criminal elements because that illicit funding is starting to be choked off. That hasn't really started yet, so we should see that. So what do they immediately transition to? Well, what did Sarah frickin' Adams say the other day? And Joe Kent put out, and Joe Kent's legitimate. I know Joe Kent, but Joe Kent gets his intel from certain sources, and there's no way for him to, he's still operating within a framework, and the threat could be very real, right? But why are they? Well, they transitioned to the Islamic threat. Why'd they kill Kirk right now? Drive people into Christianity. Then you turn Christians against Islam. That's the old fight,
Mm,
right? The old return to Crusades. And you're seeing all these channels, these Catholic chivalric, knightly channels pop up over the last year and a half, 2 years out of nowhere. And immediately they get 30, 50, 60, 100,000 followers. And it's all knightly stuff, martial stuff, etc., which I'm not opposed to,
sure, but
fighting's,
understand, yeah, understand why
but
it's here.
understand there's a huge funding operation going on to get young men into Christianity, get them into these martial traditions, and then loose them against Islam in a massive fight that they can't win. Oh, we'll kill lots of Muslims. We've always killed lots of Muslims from the Crusades forward. But in the process, we'll end up decimating our own male populations, our own young men. And then the land here in our own countries are, they can just take them. That's the plan. And how do you counter that? Well, there's only one way to counter it. And it's, the book I just wrote, A Modern Knight's Guidebook. That's not a Christian order. It's not a non-Christian order, right? Because I'm not opposed to Christians. It's just Christians are too easily mollified or radicalized, and we need to be careful of both. Um, we do need our young men to go to martial traditions. We do need our young men to know how to understand the seven elements of power and all these sophisticated things. But we need also ensure that they understand that the only thing there is real for them to fight for is the land they live on, the land they're standing on, and no other fight anywhere else is, if they leave the land, they lose the land. I mean, that's what happened to Germany. Germany sent 5 to 7, sent more than that. It sent 11 to 14 million of its young men to war. 5 to 7 of them were killed. And the financialists just bought Germany, right? That's what World War II was really about, slaughtering Germans. It was the same thing before with Napoleon's armies. Go fight, who funded Napoleon's incursion into Russia that decimated the French armies and then left France open to be bought by the financialists? The financialists did.
Yeah,
The
well,
bankers. They need to recapitalize their system. They have to have our lands. If they can't get Russia, because Russia's proven that they can fight and will fight, and they can't get China because China can burn 300 million men.
yeah, they don't give a fuck.
And they got all the manufacturing and tech. Well, they do care actually. That's a misnomer about the Chinese. They
Well,
do
what I
care
mean,
about their people, but
no, I
but
mean
they
is
will do it.
what
They
I
will
mean
do
is
it.
like
Yeah, yeah.
I mean almost like mathematically they don't give a fuck.
Correct. Yeah, correct. They'll do it.
Yeah,
And they got all this manufacturing capacity, et cetera. So good luck taking on China. Good luck even sending India after China. Um, they got that's the other thing. People are like, well, we'll use India against China. People, you do realize the Himalayas lay right between the two, right? And
yeah,
you do understand this is the largest mountain range, highest mountain range
yeah,
in the world, right? So good luck fighting over the top of that. But again, what do you do? The one recourse that we have is our young men do need to get involved. They do need to get, and again, I'm not opposed to Christianity. If they go down that pathway, I'm not opposed if they come down the Norse pathway, which is a lot of our ancestry too. But they need to train for war because that's what we're being driven to. There's virtually no chance that doesn't happen in the next 3 to 5 years. But we need to anchor to our own land. If you're going to fight, fight for your own land, on your own land. Don't let somebody convince you. So what are they doing? They're flooding our countries. They've already flooded all these terrorist assets and organizations and capabilities in here. Why? Because The resentfuls need to be the ones who are driving the pace of everything. And so far, the responsibles have been able to counter. But when it comes down to the real fight that's being set up, the real fight that is being set up is is a return to the Crusades. It is Christianity against Islam. And I'm not saying that's not a legitimate fight,
Sure.
right? But forget the Middle East, leave it alone. Let them fight it out there. Forget where else Islam is in the world, right? Deal with that as we have to. But they are infiltrated all throughout our own countries, and we need to deal with them here. And that's if the resentfuls, as they're doing, right? They transition immediately. And what happened? Immediately after the Windsor meeting, right? The dinner at Windsor Castle is when all of the Sarah Adams and everybody else started, the signals for Islamic terrorism started getting fed again.
Mm.
Why? Because they need to transition us to this level of hate. It's also why Charlie Kirk's assassination happened when it did. It's why all the push to Christianity, yada yada.
Tell everyone where to find your books. I got this.
Yeah, so Amazon, I think The Eternal War, The Art of Being a Man, Financialist Kill Chain, This Our English Civilization, and A Modern Knight's Guidebook. I think all of those would be the best ones to read. Probably The Eternal War first, because down underneath this is all much deeper stuff than communist, fascist, monarchist, all the labels. Down underneath some deeper things going on. And that's in The Eternal War. And then A Modern Knight's Guidebook is the latest one, and that's how do you prepare yourself as a man, and some women, but mostly as a man, for the type of world that we're in, type of conflicts that we're dealing with. And then Substack, emburlingame.substack.com.
Um, in terms of, we said, if they have they want it to go hot, but they want to be in control of it, or they don't want to be the ones to do it, and they have the state.
Well, they
One
don't
way,
have the whole state, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, or
They
they
want to
don't. They don't.
discredit
They don't have
they
this.
want to discredit this current
Yeah,
regime so
yeah.
that they can, justify replacing the regime that's actually effectively pushing back against them with their own regime.
Um, and I thought this last year after they tried to kill Trump. Um, and I feel more solidified in it now. This doesn't these, and I could be wrong, but these don't seem like the actions of a confident power structure. The ones that are the far left, Marxist, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Those were disposable the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but what I mean is like the way they're kind of reacting now. They're reacting and I feel like a different way than Trump's first administration. The first administration seemed very superficial. It was just Antifa this, Proud Boys that, shooting at Trump, killing Kirk. These don't seem. This seems a lot less like measured,
Oh, I
and it can.
disagree. I disagree fundamentally.
I was gonna say it seems okay. Maybe wrong word, measured, but this seems like it's higher. It's later. I don't know shit about sports.
Yes.
It's later in the football game. They're still trying,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're doing a little riskier plays. They're really going for some Hail Marys. They're still measured. They're still
Well,
calculated, but not something you would do in the first quarter. I don't know
okay.
anything about sports.
Yeah, no, 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 no. So, um, a great place to take the conversation. Okay, because it is something people need to understand. Um, they are fully, when they decided to see if they could assassinate Trump, That was fully committing.
Yeah.
Killing Charlie Kirk is the final full commitment, and here's why. And we should see acceleration and expansion of that. A whole bunch of people, not as public figures that, but a whole lot of other people um, being sidelined. But point being is this: again, they don't want to go hot. They don't want to go to this level. If they can, they're estrogenic. They like to do everything from the shadows, from the Praetorians. They like to do everything from behind the scenes because when they come out into the public or get drawn out in the public, they get crushed. So they want to do everything, but they are fully willing to go the full distance if need be. Right. And that's what the assassinations, et cetera, are demonstrating. And what they're saying, what they're doing with that is saying, we are all in. And this is where it's going to go. And it's going to get worse. And it's going to go real bad. And what they try to do, what they're hoping for is they're hoping for a reasonable man on the other side, reasonable testosterone on the side to go, we're not ready and we really just don't want to take it there. And unfortunately, what you have to counter these folks with this mind is you have to have a reasonable man on the other side that says, we have to take it there. And if
Yeah.
you look at Trump's, it's the same thing in a divorce. At a certain point, I had to say, this is just going to destroy the family if I continue with this marriage. This is going to destroy us. And I have
Sure.
to take this fight on. And it got as ugly as I thought it was going to get. In fact, it got even uglier.
Sure.
Right. And so at a certain point, the testosterone, the male, the healthy male says, okay. And if you look at Trump, he was really visibly shaken by the assassination of Kirk. He thought highly of Charlie
Well,
Kirk.
he thought highly of him, and I think he also saw a parallel universe of what last year is supposed to be. The
Yeah.
mockery, the replaying, the high
Yes.
definition, the gruesomeness. Wasn't
Yeah.
just shot. It's not an abstract thing. His
Yes.
carotid artery exploded. It looked like something out of
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan. I think he also saw that.
Yeah. So absolutely. But
But he's also very
Charlie
close to him,
Kirk
sure.
was
Yeah.
somebody that was almost son-like to him or
Well, yeah, he fought him on Air
grandson-like
Force
to
One.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was, so give me a second.
There you go.
The reason okay, so to your point, right? We need to be very careful not to underestimate Praetorians or think they're on the back foot. The Marxists are, but they were never the Praetorians. The Praetorians are the fascists, the Praetorians, and not the National Socialist Nazis. Everybody get your freaking history right, right? And your ideologies right. Um, so give me a second.
You're good.
The same fascists are the ones that led that wound up taking over that, well, actually fostering, creating the National Socialists specifically to kill millions of German men, to take Germany off the field, even to this day. And what's happening now? Germany's being decimated without a war, economically and otherwise, because there's no young men that will stand and fight for Germany. They've
And
been flooded. Their whole country's been flooded with, I can't remember what it is right now. It's like 30% of the population are non-Germans.
they've also been guilted into submission.
That's the other piece. They want us to go too far because then they use that on the other side too,
Well,
right?
they
As
just in general, it's always been like, they're like, I don't want to be proud of my country because they're, and hey, man,
yeah,
the Nazis, those aren't
yeah,
you, dude. That was 90 years ago. All right.
correct.
I'm
And oh, by the
not,
way,
yeah,
wasn't most of the young men who died either, right?
yeah.
Virtually none of those were Nazis. So, point being is this: we need to be very careful not to conflate three things. We need to not conflate the fascists with National Socialists, which is where everything is now. We need to not conflate fascism with Marxism. The Marxists are the ones they burn first. The National Socialists, the ethno-nationalists, are the ones they burn next. Then you get down to the actual fascist, and unfortunately, because of Operation Paperclip and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and many others, right? 200 some odd named and a whole lot of unnamed operations, we've had a fascist system. Look at the revolving door of the FDA and
Mm.
pharma. Look at the revolving door in the FCC. Look at the revolving door in the SEC, et cetera. We've had a fascist system for 40, 50 years, politically, economically.
As an aside, is that from Operation Paperclip, or is that an inevitable? Because even, Smedley Butler was talking about this stuff in like 1915.
Yeah, yeah. So very
Just
good
as an
point.
aside, I don't have, I'm not
Well,
defending or opposed to.
no, no, no. It's a very good point
Seems
actually.
like revolving door
It's
kind of
already is
eventually bleeds
happening.
in. Yeah,
Yeah, because FDR is actually the one who put it started under Wilson, right? But FDR is the one who really, that's what the FDR presidency was putting the fascist infrastructure in place in the United States. It just accelerated and became far more capable by bringing the best fascist in the world in,
absolutely. No,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then trying to lock it in so that, the responsibles, oligarchs can't say, no, we're not doing this. We're going to get rid of you.
the same like how blood and soil is real, like humans are not interchangeable widgets. In that same way, I've always thought like, sure, I get it. World War II just ends, 80 million dead. You got to bring them over because we want them to design their. I get it. There's no way that that doesn't bleed out somehow. It just you can't.
So,
You take me and remove me and put someone else in. It's just not going to be Tommy's podcast. You're gonna have the whole Rolodex. You go put me on some other show and give me the hosting job. In enough time, it's going to become my thing. I'm going to
yeah,
get my people in there, whether it's intentional
yeah,
or malicious or not. My
yeah,
style, I'm going to. I hosted Joe Altman's show yesterday, and and I know all the producers. They're like, "What notes do you want?" I was like, "Oh, fuck everything." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "I'm just gonna make it up. That's what I do every day." And they're like, "Jesus, all right." But like, even in like
yeah,
1 hour, that kind of
yeah.
became my show. There's no way that doesn't happen when you bring
That's
them all over
exactly
here in 45, 46, 47.
exactly
Keep going.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 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 no. So it was a very good point. So, where
A
does this
hardcore fascist, which we've had FCC, FDA.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, we've had fascism since the 1930s. It's just been getting steadily spread out across the country and embedded across the country. And then we have had pockets of, and quite frank, quite frankly, a good portion of the reason of why the fascism was rolled out in the United States is because the Marxists were making headway. We got to remember we had Marxist riots even here in the Pacific Northwest in the late 1800s.
Really?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Marxists have been in and out of unions. And so fascism is okay, so behind it, the bankers, the Praetorians, et cetera, they created this Marxism, well, fostered Marxism. They fostered fascism. These two things are the two resentful factions are warring against each other forever. And for a period of time, you'll get a progress on the Marxist side. And for another period of time, you'll get progress on the fascist side. The problem is that everybody else is locked into this eternal war, this eternal conflict that's fostered and supported and backed by the bankers, by the Praetorians, because they make money and maintain control off of all of it. And they don't care if the Marxists dominate. They don't care if the fascists dominate. They still benefit. They're still in control. And so the responsibles come along every once in a while, like what's happened in Russia after the Soviet collapse, like what's happened in China after, well, I wouldn't say after communism, but after the China hustle was shut down. And now we are trying to make that move here. And I believe also in all of the English speaking world. That's why the dinner at Windsor. Now we're trying to make that move to get rid of both the Marxists and the fascists. Problem is that they are in bed. This is what the Westphalian system is that was put in place in the 1600s. It's this perpetual fight between Marxist mindset, Marxist ideology and governance structures and fascist ideology and government structures. It's just this constant back and forth fighting that we're all trapped in with the illusion of, freedom and independence, et cetera, of liberal democracy, because that's what liberal democracy is. Liberal democracy is never ending fight between Marxists and fascists. We just gussy it up and put fancy clothes on it, but that's reality what it is. That's what oligarchy is. And Aristotle and others cautioned against this thousands of years ago. So, the responsibles are now, I do think Eisenhower was the one who who saw this, watched it, recognized it, both in Europe and saw the carnage in Europe of it. Didn't want to see that happening here because, again, Eisenhower and Patton and all those guys had been,
They were in World War One. Yeah.
They were in World War One and
I
they'd
saw
seen
that shit.
everything in
Yeah,
between
Truman.
and they
Yeah.
were, reading the intelligence and they knew players and they knew people and they saw this get rolled, put in place and rolled out. And then they had to fight it. You know, people need to realize these guys were fairly senior ranking guys in the interregnum between World War One and two. They were in on all the intelligence. They saw all the moves. So I believe in Eisenhower and some of the others, some of the other generals, et cetera. The problem is that Truman, I believe foolishly, but I don't know that it matters, had chartered the C, had tried, he'd
Yeah.
fought it, but he had chartered the CIA.
And he was super cautious. He was like, I don't want a peacetime
Well, and then even
Aleppo. And
afterwards, he made sure that they didn't get funded, and that's why they did the Marshall Plan,
they
backdoor
just give him
through
10%
Congress.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, 7%, I think it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Whatever it was. It was
Yeah,
for
had to
inflation,
go
$1
immediately.
trillion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And, and Truman, he published in a newspaper 1 month to the day after JFK died about how he regretted the CIA and how I'm paraphrasing and how it might be doing shadowy things domestically. So he felt that. And yeah, I forget who said it it might have been Clay. I feel like it was Clay.
Mm,
He's like, you know what? He's like, I have an unpopular take. He's like, Eisenhower's a pussy. He's like, five-star general. He got every military age male in the country has your back. And the last 3 days of your presidency, you come out, give the military industrial complex speech, and then leave and do nothing and hand it off to Kennedy. And that always kind of shocked me because I'm like, that's a good point. He just pointed it out and then said, well, I'm done. But now you're talking about it. I'm thinking like, do I really think that Eisenhower, World War One, World War Two, he created continuity of government, primarily him. Do I really think he just looked at this and went, "Hey guys, beware of this"? Anyway,
no,
or did he set something in motion?
he set something in motion because he knew that and look after World War One and World War Two. The two officers who were the most publicly known that men would have gone to on any lengths to serve and fight were both killed at the end of the war, towards just after the wars.
Patton,
Patton in World War
MacArthur,
Two, and who was the other one? World War One.
died at the end of World War One.
Lawrence of Arabia,
Oh,
right? Sir Lawrence. Those two men were the very men that if you were going to go after this Westphalian world, this fascist world, and you were going to rip it out, which is deeply, the Praetorian system, the financialists, it's all, that I talk about. There were two men that could have led those fights that young men would have come and done anything for. After World War One, it was Lawrence, and after World War Two, it was Patton. And both of them died shortly after the wars. And to his credit, um, to his credit, um, MacArthur, who I'm actually a rather substantive fan of, MacArthur saw this fight as well. And MacArthur was older. People got to realize General MacArthur was older than Eisenhower and those guys. And I don't know if people know this. If I remember correctly, MacArthur and his father are the only father-son Congressional Medal of Honor recipients.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, both his father earned him in the Indian Wars, earned his in the Indian Wars, and MacArthur in I think World War II. Um, I may be mistaken about when MacArthur earned his, but if I remember correctly, they're the only father. Because when I was a Tomb of the Unknown, when I was a Tomb Guard at Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you had to earn your walk on the mat till you were a badge holder. You had to earn your walk on the mat with a piece of knowledge the badge holders didn't have, and that was one of the ones I chased down. I used to spend. That's another thing people don't understand about me. When I was a Tomb Guard, I had to earn my walks on the mat. So I spent every third day, I spent hours every day in the National Archives in Washington, D.C., or in the Arlington Archives, or mostly in the National Archives because you get a mixing, or in the Library of Congress, or in the Smithsonian. So part of the reason I have all this, dorky information and can put all this together is because when I was, for the 9 months I was at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, every third day I was in the documents. Like World War II, they were going to promote They were going to do Supreme Allied Commanders, and they were going to promote five-star generals, and there hadn't been a five-star general before. Washington, General Washington, I think was only three or four-star general, right? And as the founding father of, the United States military and first president and all of that, they didn't want anybody to ever outrank General Washington. So they posthumously
Yeah, they
promoted General Washington to
retroactively,
rank seven-star general.
yeah.
I can't even remember what the title for it is, right? But um, anyways, that's kind of a nerdy aside, but it's a reason why I have all this information is I used to spend hours a day, every 3 days in the archives, reading the original documents and then trying to piece it together. But anyways,
No,
back to
I got a fun fact.
okay.
The on Pearl Harbor, the head of the Secret Service in D.C. They were scrambling. They didn't know if other attacks were coming. They went to the Treasury's impound and took out Al Capone's armored limo, put some American flags on it, brought it back, and that was
Wow.
FDR's ride.
Wow.
Because they didn't, they were like, who has the strongest car? And they're like, that Al Capone motherfucker. That thing was stopping every round.
Wow.
And that's one of my
Wow.
favorite facts. So FDR,
So
very quickly, I think they replaced it, but for at least like a couple weeks, FDR was
so
zipping around in Al Capone's fucking
so
car,
the
little
original
flags on it.
beast was Al Capone's car. Is
Yeah,
that what you're
isn't that
saying?
fucking
Oh,
crazy?
that's awesome. Murder Inc.
Yeah,
Murder Inc.
it is, but
Yeah.
it's also kind of like game recognized game,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Well, that's what it is. It's like when talking to Crypto Rich, right? It's like this is mob war,
Yeah.
straight up mob wars, just at the high level. But getting back to to Eisenhower, to Truman, to
Yeah, yeah.
MacArthur, to okay. I actually I do very much understand what Clay is saying, but it would if Eisenhower thought they could have won, Eisenhower would have done it, and Patton thought they could win. Now, Patton wanted to go fight Patton was actually looking at the wrong enemy. Patton was looking at Marxists. He wasn't looking at, you know, the fascists that were being brought in, et cetera. MacArthur was also somewhat looking at the wrong thing. He was looking at China and et cetera. At least that's ostensibly what we were told. I'm not
Sure.
sure it's exactly true. Um, but, MacArthur is retired 50 some odd years in the military at that point, been in uniform for 50 some odd years.
Desperately.
But point being is this, I agree with you. I believe very firmly that Truman, Eisenhower were setting in motion the thing that and the oligarchs behind him because they were just two men and they represented power factions, set in motion the removal of the mob state, right? This Praetorian system that had been instantiated in code in 1947, which was a marrying of the mafia straight up with the intelligence communities and the bankers, et cetera. My belief is that the Kennedys came in, young men, that's why the youngest president ever, because young men fight these kinds of wars, not older men, right? So they brought in Kennedy and his brother to go to war, and it was premature. They did not, they underestimated how embedded and how thoroughly sophisticated the mob state Praetorian system was because it goes back in Europe to the 1640s directly, and it goes back in the English speaking world, the British system, what would become the PSYOP that is the British system, but it would become embedded within the English speaking peoples in 1688 in the Inglorious Revolution when they put a fake king. I mean, he was a Prince of Orange, right? William of Orange, but they put a European king on the English throne. And so this Praetorian fascist, whatever you want to call it, but this Praetorian is the best term because it's this hidden power structure. That Praetorian system was put in power of the English speaking peoples all the way back into the late 1600s. And it's been embedded throughout ever since. And so when Eisenhower and Kennedy's decided to openly move against it in our country, they failed to understand how deep it went. And so they got killed. And then people are going to need to remember Reagan got shot. Reagan was trying to
Yeah.
shut down the illicit funding stuff with the Iran Contra, and they shot him in the chest in broad daylight.
Yeah.
right? And then he backed off. And, and this ties back in, right? That was the 80s. Okay. Back to Trump, right? The 80s. So,
And
in
And
order to,
Reagan's when Reagan met Trump, he said, I'm meeting a future president."
so what I suspect, because when I look at history, the last time such a thing was done that we know about was Rome, was Constantine. But Constantine's defeating of the Praetorians and ripping them out in Milvian Bridge in 312, that operation began a century and a half earlier with the splitting of the empire into two control centers, right? Eastern and Western, development of Western power or Eastern power structures, rooting out of the Praetorians, drawing them out, all of this stuff. It took over a century back then to, draw out the Praetorians, bring them out in the open, get people to realize there was a Praetorian problem, to get enough of the elites to be secure by Constantine and Constantine's elements. This is why the move to Christianity, so that you can get the people involved and on board and turned against the Roman system, the traditional Roman system, which was completely infiltrated. And then, that Constantine finally comes along, the right conditions, or have the final battle. And the final battle happens at Milvian Bridge. And then he hunts them down for the rest of his life. And a pocket of them fled to where? The lagoons of Venice. So historically, to remove this kind of hidden power structure takes a long time and a lot of concerted effort. And And I believe we're now in the culmination of what Eisenhower and even Truman and the Kennedys and others have set in motion. And now we're going to fight it out. And we're going to fight it out here at home. They want us to go to this big bloody war. That's the other thing. I've been looking at the GWAT in all these different angles, having served in it as well as an older guy. Um, I believe that what they were trying to do with the GWAT is get the Holy War. Didn't
Yeah.
work. The enemy wasn't sufficient enough, and there wasn't enough, religious zeal in the West anymore because of the Marxists, their supporting of the Marxists. So they just couldn't get the Holy War. The enemy wasn't a capable enough fighter, and we just weren't able to be driven to some kind of whole religious zeal. We killed a lot of them, millions of, Muslims, but that didn't get them the Holy War. So what did they do? They wound up using 20-year, 25-year war for us to weed out all the weak over there, to teach them all of our techniques, training, equipment, war fighting, all of it. We taught them how to fight at this level for 25 years.
Hmm.
And we armed them, trillions of dollars of arming them. And we left all that shit
It's a
in
great point.
Afghanistan on purpose.
It's a great point. Varsity went and scrimmaged the eighth graders and then left all
Correct.
their equipment and said, I hope they don't get better.
I hope they don't come and fight us one day, right? Okay, so and I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago when it really dawned on me clearly, and I was like, GWAT boys, the GWAT was our World War One, and World War Two, almost 20 years on, is now about to kick off. But it ain't going to kick off over in Europe and the Middle East, et cetera. That's where they want it to. That's why they want to channelize us there and radicalize us there. And that's why they got to do this whole Christian push so that we can get this holy. And they're doing all the Islamic stuff on that side, and they're doing the nightly order stuff. It's when you look at it all as a piece, you're like, yeah, these motherfuckers are trying to get Crusades 2.0. And why? Well, what people need to realize is that why they did the Crusades? Two things. One, they needed to bring down Constant. It was a revenge. They needed to bring down the Byzantine Empire, which was the bastion of Christianity. The homeland of original Christianity, um, and a powerful empire, and they needed to bring it down. If you look at who the Crusaders attacked the most, it wasn't Islam; it was Christian states, principalities, etc. All right. The other thing was is they had a whole lot of young men, martial young men, they needed to die because they were violent and dangerous back home. And that was a persistent threat. So let's go do a holy war over there. And let's give young men the opportunity to earn lands and titles over there because we're afraid of them here at home. Doesn't that sound like kind of today?
Hmm. To go back to said about the royal dinner and all
Mm.
the tech guys, and then was it earlier this year a bunch of tech dudes were given like military positions? Wasn't it? Didn't something happen or a bunch of private dudes? I don't know if they became colonels or some shit. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
lieutenant colonels. Yeah.
What do you think all of that is? I tend to believe it's whatever the big AI put, regardless of it if AI is a false pro whatever. The fact that they're going for it, it does kind of seem like this is something just like the Manhattan Project or, the H-bomb project. Retroactively, you can look back and see all these contracts to these companies that didn't make sense at the time. You're like, why are you opening, a 5,000 acre, electricity plant? Like, in hindsight, you go, oh, they were electrolyzing this for that and whatever. Um, and the H-bomb project was more secretive than the Manhattan Project, yet it cost 10 times more. A lot of people don't know that. They buttoned it up even better than Manhattan Project. What do you think all of that is? Is that something around along the lines of just some big AI push? Again, regardless if it's dog
No.
shit or not, they're going for well, but it's a peculiar thing that all those guys became
Okay.
lieutenants, and then there you said that they're out the royal dinner faggotry.
Okay. So the ones at the Royal, I'm not going to say the last part because I'm actually loyal, but um, the Royal dinner was not the kind of people you're talking about. It was the leaders of these companies, these major companies,
Uh,
who may or may not be acting on their own behalf because of the Praetorian problem within, their own security. And I suspect there was two things that happened there at that dinner to include the royals. Um, we will provide your security, but you are no longer supporting the fascists. You are no longer supporting these things. All as well, your companies will no longer be used to spy on and provide intel to the enemy. And we'll for that we the United States and the good factions of the intelligence communities, et cetera, in the fights that are ahead, we will provide your security. We won't go and destroy your company for the nefarious things that you've been doing, right? And the same with the crown, because the crown in the United King in the English system is the executive. It is the executive of the government. It's been sidelined for centuries. And it actually has to act as an executive, but it can only do that if the knives are off its throats and the kids' throats. So I think that's one piece. Now, with respect to, so stop aiding and abetting the enemy, and we'll provide your security. The other, for that top level people. On the other side now, but also do your job and, sustain these companies and these countries and all that. Okay. On the other, where they're um, promoting guys to lieutenant colonel and bringing them into the military. What people need to understand is that there are two industries that quite literally hire the most intelligent people in the world: banking, finance, technology. Quite literally. And we need to go back to World War II and prior to World War II. Or in the early days leading up to World War II and World War II, a whole lot of people in the civilian world were brought directly into the military, and particularly into special operations, right? The OSS, et cetera, that had no military backgrounds. They were bankers, they were lawyers, they were et cetera. Why? Because those were skill sets that were needed for the war ahead. Okay. If the Praetorians are the banking finance system, which they are, and you're going to go to war with them, and those are some of the smartest people on earth, and they are, you're going to need people on the other side who have sufficient intelligence, mental acuity and capabilities in this vastly complex world, right? In which we're going to wage a war. Wars, 90% of war is not, us grunts on the ground. It's all these other domains and spaces and areas and all these feints and counter feints and movements and counter movements and, et cetera, et cetera. And people need to realize that 90% or more of all assets are virtual now. They're digital. They're contracts, securities, obligations, all kinds of stuff. So if we are going to fight the Praetorians finally, and they are the bankers, and they have the smartest people, some of the smartest people on earth on their side. We got to have some of the smartest people on earth on our side who really understand the infrastructure of everything and understand how all this stuff works at a very deep level, and they're all in tech. So to me, it's a preparation for a very real fight.
Gotcha.
Now, of course, you're going to have, yes, there are the CBDC people, and yes, there are the et cetera, et cetera. But to me, looking at Elon and knowing some of these people, not hanging out, we're not buddies or any of that, but I've known some of these guys for 30 some odd years. I was in Silicon Valley for 30 years, in tech, in finance. Um, if I was going to go to war, I'd need people equally as intelligent to the enemy's people, and they're all in tech, predominantly all in tech.
It's a fair point. Um, for right now, we gotta put a pin in it.
Yeah,
I have to hop on a meeting and then another show. Um, yeah, no, it's with I think the USAID thing kind of made me excited, but I, I
just
managed
the beginning.
I managed my
Yeah.
expectations, but kind of designating these groups, it does seem like it's rolling forward. So I think something's better than nothing. Not that that doesn't play down the severity of it, but I'd rather be on shaky ground but moving forward than be on solid ground and knowing that I'm fucked. You know what I mean? It's
The war is engaged and we're all in it.
yeah.
And I will say this, we don't know exactly how it's going to go, but the fact that at least enough of our elites, true elites, have taken on the war and are fully engaged in it is something very positive.
Mm.
That they're willing to risk being assassinated. Like what did JD Vance say the other right? He said, I don't know, when he did the Charlie Kirk show the day after, he said, I don't know if I'm going to be assassinated too. But,
I
I'm
didn't see that.
paraphrasing,
I
but
didn't.
I'm going to stay in this fight. This is the fight.
Well, you have to rationally walk it out. And if they're willing to kill you, then whatever the thing is so big that it
Cor-
will eventually kill you. So it's like you get assassinated or you die in the death camp. It's kind of you're
Correct.
in it, and it's both those
Correct.
options suck. I agree, but it's also a sober examination of where we are.
And when the princes, right, the modern princes are in that place, things start to happen.
Well, stay tuned, I guess. Fucking, I don't know.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yeah. I mean, shit like this is the one I'm like, people are like, everyone always comments how I've never seen anything on Netflix. I haven't seen like 99% of the most popular movies in the last century. I'm like, dude, reality is so much more invigorating. Like, it's not like a lack of a desire or an enjoyment of stories. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
playing out in front of you right now. It is real sh Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, this will be up. Actually, it might be up today. I don't know. I'll text it to you. But
All
I
right,
gotta
man.
hop on a meeting right now, so we
All
gotta
right, Tommy.
sub. But dude, thank you for doing this, guys. Please
Yep.
subscription, grab the books, Twitter, Substack, YouTube, all that good shit. Yeah. Till next time.